Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight's story is titled, The Hollow in the Pines. Let the shadows speak. Part 1. The Dead-End Highway. I never wanted to see her again. Not like that. Not on the side of an empty highway, lit only by the flickering high beams of a rusted-out Oldsmobile and a cracked neon motel sign that buzzed like it was trying to scream. But life doesn't always give you choices. When my sister pulled up next to me in that dented car, everything I thought I'd buried came crawling back, slow, jagged, and hungry. "Get in, Nora," she said. "It's time." Her name was Lorna. She was my twin, but people rarely guessed that. She had this way of carrying grief like armor, and when she looked at you, it felt like she could see every lie you'd ever told yourself just to keep breathing. I tossed my duffel bag in the back seat and climbed in. No hug, no apology, no "how have you been?" Just gravel crunching under bald tires as we drove into the dark. The last time I saw Lorna, we were both 23. She was holding her 4-year-old son, Milo, on her hip, crying silently in the corner of a hospital hallway while cops asked questions they already knew the answers to. He was gone, vanished, backyard in full daylight. One moment he was chasing a wind-up toy, the next, nothing. No prints, no struggle, not even a bent blade of grass out of place. It's the kind of story people whisper about, the kind that makes you check your locks twice and keep your kids inside after sunset. Milo became a statistic. Lorna became something else. We rode in silence for hours. Outside, the pine trees thickened, leaning over the Tulane road like they wanted to blot out the stars. I kept waiting for her to speak. When she finally did, it was so soft I barely caught it. "I know where he is." I turned to her. "What?" I said. "I know where he is now. Milo." Her eyes didn't leave the road. Her knuckles were white against the steering wheel. My chest tightened. "Lorna, it's been over a year. We've been through this. You think he's alive, then you spiral, then you vanish for months. Please don't." "I'm not spiraling," she snapped. "I found something real, and you're going to help me finish it." Before I could respond, she reached over and yanked a thick envelope from the glove compartment, tossing it into my lap. I flipped it open. News clippings, photocopied pages from old folklore books, printed emails with subject lines like "Hollow Ones in the Appalachians" and "The Dead of the Pines." And drawings. Children's drawings. A dozen crayon pictures, all signed Milo, age 4. They were crude and childish, but they all showed the same thing. A long, faceless figure with too many arms. Always standing near trees. Sometimes reaching. Sometimes watching. Sometimes holding something. Or someone. "What is this?" I asked. "A pattern," Lorna said. "They show up in places like this. Rural places. Forgotten places. Always near pine forests. Always when something's been taken." She turned off the highway and down a gravel road, barely wide enough for one car. Branches scraped against the windows like fingers. I felt like I was being swallowed. "They're not ghosts," she whispered. "Not aliens either. They are collectors, and they never take without warning." "What do they want?" "Balance." The road ended at a rundown motel with a tilted sign that read, "Black Hollow Inn, weekly rates available." A single bulb buzzed above the office. The place looked dead. "We own it now," she said. I stared at her. "You what?" "I bought it. Cashed out everything. My savings. The insurance money. All of it." My throat went dry. "You spent Milo's insurance money on this?" She turned to me then. "It's not a motel. It's a gate. A crossroads. A place where the hollow ones come to settle debts." "That's insane." "No," she said. "What's insane is pretending he's just gone and nothing can be done. What's insane is you walking away and pretending you don't still hear his voice in your dreams." I looked away. She was right. That night, I couldn't sleep. The room Lorna gave me had yellowed wallpaper a TV from the 90s, and a window that didn't shut all the way. The air smelled like pine sap and mildew. I kept the lamp on, afraid of what I might see if I didn't. At 2:13 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my door. Not shuffling, not slow, child-sized, running. Then a knock. 3 soft raps. I held my breath. Another knock, louder. When I finally opened the door, no one was there. Just the sound of wind in the trees, and a single drawing taped to the doorknob. Another crayon sketch. This one showed a tall tree with a hollow in its center. Standing beside it was Milo, smiling. The next morning, I confronted Lorna. She didn't look surprised. "They know you're here now," she said simply. "They know we're ready." Ready for what, exactly? To make the trade. Part 2. The Exchange Ledger. The morning fog hung low over Black Hollow like a shroud, thick and unmoving. It wasn't natural fog. It didn't roll, didn't lift. It sat, watching. I stood outside room 6, coffee trembling in my hand. I hadn't told Lorna about the drawing. I wasn't sure if it would prove her right or prove me crazy, but I couldn't stop thinking about it, about the way Milo had drawn the tree. The hollow in the trunk looked too real. Inside the motel office, Lorna was seated behind the counter, flipping through an old ledger, leather-bound, worn, with corners that looked gnawed on. The pages inside weren't receipts or guest names. They were something else. Symbols, dates, names crossed out in red ink, and something else, a phrase repeated on every page. One in exchange for one. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep or too much knowledge. Maybe both. "I need you to be part of this," she said. "No," I said. "You need therapy. You need help. We both do. You can't just, sacrifice people to some tree demon and hope it gives your kid back." "They're not people," she said flatly. "Not really." My blood ran cold. "What the hell does that mean?" She slid the ledger across the counter. "Read it." I didn't want to, but I did. The first entry was from 1962. Child taken, Virginia, Pine Creek Road. 6 years old. No footprints. No struggle. The next line read, "Returned after 7 days. Father and mother dead by drowning. Ledger marked paid." Flip. 3 disappearances in Monroe County. Forested area behind old mine. Trading attempted. 2 offered. 1 returned. Flip. Lone survivor of fire in children's home speaks of tall figure in smoke. Claims it whispered in her ear. Flip. The most recent entry was from last year. The name, Milo Carter. No return date. No resolution. Just one word. Awaiting. "They took him," Lorna said, "but they gave me a chance. One in exchange for one." I didn't understand it at first. I thought it meant I had to find a body. But it's not just death they want. It's weight, guilt, loss, grief. Something equal to what they took. "You're talking about sacrifices," I said. "This is murder." She stared at me, quiet, and I realized then she'd already done it. I backed away. "Lorna, what did you do?" She didn't answer. She just said, "Room 3 is ready. I need you to greet the next guest." I didn't want to, but part of me moved anyway. Like I was slipping into an old dream I couldn't wake up from. Room 3 had once been a storage closet. Now it was freshly painted with clean sheets and a vase of plastic flowers by the bed. On the wall hung a cheap watercolor print of a tree, tall, skeletal, and hollow at the core. I stared at it too long. It blinked. That afternoon, the truck arrived. Rust red, with a camper shell and Georgia plates. Out stepped a woman in her 40s, wiry build, short blonde hair, and a boy, maybe 10, maybe younger, dragging a battered suitcase. She walked into the office while the boy stood silently at the edge of the parking lot, watching the pines. "I need a room," she said. "Just for the night. We're passing through." Lorna smiled too warmly. "Of course. Room 3's available." I opened my mouth. Lorna shot me a look. The woman handed over cash. Didn't ask for change. When she turned to leave, I grabbed her arm. "Don't stay here," I said. "Please." She yanked away, eyes narrowed. "Mind your business." The boy didn't look at me. He just kept staring at the trees. That night, I didn't sleep either. The motel groaned like it was breathing. The ledger lay open on my nightstand, as if it had moved on its own. The page had changed. New handwriting. A new name, Nathaniel Yates. The boy, underneath, in red. Exchange pending. I stormed into the office. "Call them," I said. "Tell them to leave. Tell them it's not safe." Lorna sat calmly at the desk. She was sipping wine from a coffee mug. "It's already done." "No, you don't get to decide this." She looked at me, tired. "You think I wanted this? You think I don't die a little every time I see that tree? But we have to balance the death. It's the only way to get Milo back. What if they never give him back?" I shouted. "What if you're just feeding it? What if this thing is lying?" Her voice cracked. "Then I've killed for nothing." I went back to my room. Outside, I could hear Nathaniel laughing. Not in joy, but the kind of laugh that sounds rehearsed, like a kid who's seen too much and doesn't know how else to respond to fear. The ledger was open again. His name was now crossed out. I didn't go outside that night. I didn't watch, but I heard the knocking on the trees. And I heard the scream. Just one. Then silence. Part 3. The quiet between screams. The next morning, the boy was gone. His mother stood in the gravel parking lot, barefoot, eyes red-rimmed, throat raw from screaming. Her screams had faded to hoarse gasps sometime before sunrise, and now she simply stood, clutching her own arms, repeating the same phrase over and over like a broken doll. He was right there. I put him to bed. He was right there. No broken windows. No force locks. Nothing. The bed was still warm. His toothbrush was still wet. But he was gone. The sheriff came around noon. A tired man named Sheriff Buckley with a limp and the eyes of someone who'd seen enough to stop asking questions. He interviewed the mother on the porch while Lorna served him coffee like she was hosting brunch. I watched from inside, hands trembling. My stomach felt like a pit. When the woman started sobbing again, Buckley put a hand on her shoulder. "We'll look into it, ma'am. There's a search party heading to the forest line this afternoon." She nodded numbly. He didn't take notes. He didn't check the room. He didn't even ask for security footage. Because he knew. After he left, I confronted Lorna again. "You're getting sloppy." She didn't look up from the ledger. "No one's going to report us. Not out here. He was just a child." "So was Milo," she snapped. And unlike that kid, Milo was taken without warning. No deal. No ledger. No balance. What I'm doing is correction. That's what cult leaders say. She closed the book slowly and looked at me with eyes that had stopped belonging to my sister weeks ago. "You think I'm a villain?" she asked. "You think I like this? I hate it, Nora, but I will burn this whole world to the ground to get my son back. And if it's all for nothing," I said, "then what are you?" That night, I couldn't sleep again. I sat in the lobby, staring at the motel's guest book, flipping through names and dates. Some pages were blank, others had been torn out. I found one entry scrawled in red ink, not by a guest, but by Lorna. "If they take enough from you, eventually they listen." My hands were still shaking when I stepped outside. The woods behind Black Hollow had changed. The pine trees leaned unnaturally, as though something massive had brushed against them. A trail of crushed undergrowth led deeper into the forest than I remembered. And at the center of it all, I saw the tree. It was real, just like in Milo's drawings. A massive pine, blackened and hollowed in the center like it had been struck by lightning, except the bark inside pulsed like it was alive. The hollow wasn't empty. Something moved inside it. I don't remember walking back. I don't remember shutting the door. But I remember what I saw. A hand, too long, too thin, bent wrong, reaching out of the hollow and dragging something back in, something that looked almost human but shimmered like it didn't belong. The next day, a new guest arrived. A man named Craig with his teenage daughter, Lucy. They were headed to Nashville. Car troubles. Just one night. Lorna lit up when she saw the girl. I snapped. "You're not doing this again," I hissed. "Not her. She's the right age," Lorna whispered back. "The hollow ones prefer the young. They're not gods. They're monsters. Even monsters keep their word." I stormed out before I could say something worse. That night I drank cheap vodka from the vending machine fridge, the kind that tastes like paint thinner and regret. Lucy wandered into the lobby around 10, said the power was flickering in their room. I told her to wait while I checked the fuse box. Instead, I followed the path behind the motel. I was drunk, angry, and stupid, but I had a plan. I'd go to the tree myself, and I'd talk to it. The forest was silent, not just quiet dead, no wind, no animals, just the soft crunch of my boots on pine needles. When I reached the hollow tree, I spoke. "I know you're there," I said. "I know what you want." The hollow pulsed. "I want Milo too," I continued. "But not like this. No more kids. No more screams. Silence. Then movement. Not from the tree, but from behind it. A shape emerged. Tall. Shadowed. It moved wrong, like it was being puppeted by invisible wires. Limbs too long. Face empty. Neck bending like wet rope. It didn't speak, but I heard it. Inside my head. One in exchange for one. "I'll do it," I whispered. "Take me instead." The thing tilted its head like it didn't understand, or didn't want to. "I'm Milo's aunt. Take me," and let him go. Silence. Then the trees shifted behind me, and Milo walked out. Part 4. What returns? He stepped through the trees like he belonged there. Same curly brown hair. Same oversized hoodie he used to drown in. Same sneakers with the red laces that Lorna never replaced because he insisted they were lucky. "Milo," I whispered. He didn't speak, just blinked at me. Slow, like he was trying to remember how. His skin was too pale, not sickly, empty, like the color had been leached out and only the outline remained. I dropped to my knees. Oh my God. I reached for him. My hand touched his. It was cold, not like a dead body cold, like pine sap and rainwater cold. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He just stared at me with eyes that looked too big for his face. "I kept your room the same," I said. "Your mom, she..." Milo finally spoke. "Where's my doll?" That broke me, because Milo never had a doll. He hated dolls, thought they were creepy, and refused to be in the same room with him. He once buried one in the backyard, just so Lorna would stop forcing playdates. So I asked him again gently, "What did you say?" He blinked. "Where's Lucy?" I stood slowly, the pit in my stomach growing. "Lucy," I repeated. "The girl in room 3? He tilted his head. "She's not mine yet." I stepped back. "What are you?" The hollow tree pulsed behind him. Something in its core glowed faintly, red like a warning. Then I heard Lorna's voice in the distance, calling for Milo. He turned toward the sound. "I have to go now," he said. "No, wait, Milo." But he was already walking, back into the trees, toward the motel. When I got back to the building, the power was out. Lorna stood in the lobby, flashlight in hand. She was crying. I wanted to yell, scream at her for everything she'd done, but all I could say was, "He's back." She froze. "What?" I saw him. "He's back." She dropped the flashlight. It clattered to the floor, casting warped shadows on the walls. "Where?" she whispered. "In the woods. Coming this way." And just then, he stepped through the front door. Milo, standing there like nothing had happened, like he'd never been missing at all. Lorna dropped to her knees. She reached for him, clutching his face in her hands, sobbing openly. "Oh God, baby, you're home." He stared at her, didn't speak, didn't blink. She didn't notice. Not yet. I did. That night, I watched from my window. Lorna tucked him into bed like it was any other Wednesday. She brushed his hair, read him a book, kissed his forehead. He just lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling like he was waiting. At 3:12 a.m., he got up, walked to the mirror, and stared for almost 15 minutes. Then he turned, looked at the window where I was watching, and smiled. The next morning, Lucy was gone. Room 3 was empty. Her clothes, her toothbrush, her father, everything vanished. Not a single tire track in the gravel. Just a smear of sap on the doorknob. Lorna didn't ask questions. She didn't speak at all that morning. Just sat with Milo on the porch, brushing his hair over and over, like she could undo everything if she just smoothed out the tangles. I approached her slowly. You know that's not him. Her hand stopped mid-stroke. She didn't look at me. I don't care, she said. Later that day, I walked to the hollow again. The forest was darker, denser. The sky never fully lit here anymore. It was like the pines drank the sunlight. The tree was waiting. I didn't speak this time. I just looked into the hollow and saw faces. Dozens. Children. Adults. Screaming silently from behind the bark like trapped insects in amber. One of them was Lucy. Another was me. Part 5. The Book of Pine and Bone. I stopped sleeping after Lucy vanished. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the tree. The hollow. The thing wearing Milo's face. It was always watching me. Not just in dreams, in memory. Like it had planted itself inside me. Lorna didn't seem to care. She doted on him day and night, brushing his hair, telling him stories, cooking his favorite meals even though he barely touched them. He just stared. At her, at me, at the mirror. Never smiled again, except when no one was looking. I needed answers. Real ones. Not Lorna's half-baked trade deal theory. Not the fairy tales passed through missing child forums and broken blogs. So I drove 2 towns over to the county archive. Black Hollow was too small to have its own. The woman behind the counter wore thick glasses and smelled like pine cleaner. I asked about the motel. Her face went still. You looking to buy that place? She asked. I shook my head. Already did. She studied me for a moment, then nodded toward the basement. You'll want the fireproof files. Top shelf. Red tags. The box was labeled Black Hollow Township, closed cases and unsolved, 1928 to 1997. Inside, I found dust and rot, and a ledger. Not like the one Lorna used. This one was bound in thin leather and etched with a burned-in insignia, a pine tree with an eye in its trunk. Inside were names. Too many names. Children, teenagers, adults, all vanished within 10 miles of the motel. Some were written in black ink, others scratched in with something red encrusted. Every few pages, the phrase appeared again, one in exchange for one. The hollow is never empty. At the very back of the book was a hand-drawn map. It showed the motel, the forest, and the tree. And one more thing I hadn't seen before, a second hollow. That night, I returned to Black Hollow. I didn't speak to Lorna, didn't wave to Milo. I just grabbed a flashlight and walked into the woods. The pine forest welcomed me with open silence. I followed the map, through the undergrowth, past the first hollow, the one Lorna knew about, the one where the trades happened, and deeper into a part of the forest that felt wrong. Colder, older. Eventually, I found it. The second hollow. It wasn't a tree. Not exactly. It was a pit. Perfectly circular, maybe 10 feet across, rimmed with ancient stones and lined with bone-white roots that pulsed faintly. At its center stood a wooden post. On it, nailed with rusted iron, was a crude doll. Not a child's toy. It was ritualistic, twisted twigs for arms, a face made of sap and teeth. Around the pit were piles of things. Shoes, teddy bears, locks of hair, and bones. Tiny bones. Something stood behind me. I didn't turn around. I know what you are, I whispered. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. I could feel its thoughts, like ants crawling across my skull. We are hunger. We are owed. We are what grows when grief is buried too long. I clench my fists. I want to make a new trade. Silence. Then, you have no child. I have something better, I said. I returned to the motel before dawn. Lorna was asleep on the couch. Milo curled beside her like a doll she never let go of. I walked past them, into room 4, the only room I kept locked. My room. I packed a bag, water, rope, flashlight, the bone-handled knife from the drawer under the sink. Then I took the guest book ledger from the lobby and scribbled a name on the last page. Nora Wren, final offering. Part 6. The Roots Remember. I waited until the motel slept. Lorna had moved into room 5 with Milo, and I could hear her through the thin walls, singing lullabies off-key, humming the same melody our mom used to hum when one of us had night terrors. I wondered if she even knew she was doing it, if some part of her still remembered we'd already been here before, already lost something. At 2:09 a.m., I stepped out the back door with my pack slung over my shoulder and a head full of lead. The forest swallowed me in seconds. The moon was high but veiled behind mist. Every tree felt closer, every branch like a hand brushing my neck. But I wasn't afraid, not in the way I used to be. Something had shifted. I didn't walk to the tree this time. I walked to the pit, the second hollow, the mouth of the forest's memory. The doll was still there, pinned to the post, grinning with sap teeth. I stood at the edge of the pit and took a breath. Then I spoke. I offer myself, I said, willingly, one in exchange for one. A clean trade. Silence. Then the earth beneath my feet moved. Not violently, just enough to let me know it was listening. I stepped forward and jumped. I expected cold. I expected death. But the moment I hit the base of the pit, the world turned inside out. The trees folded back like pages in a burning book. The soil bled black sap. The air split with soundless screams. And I stood, not in a forest, but in a space between, a place beneath bark and bone and belief. The hollow realm. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't hell. It was memory. A looping film reel of every exchange, every cry, every deal scratched into the ledger of Black Hollow. And standing at the center of it all was a figure. Not Slender Man. Not anything so defined. It was shape without form, hunger without mouth, face without eyes. It bled pine needles and whispered through root veins. You come not to pay, but to know. I swallowed. I came to offer myself. It didn't laugh, but I felt amusement wrap around my ribs like a vine. Too late. The realm twisted, and I saw the first trade. Not Lorna, not Sheriff Buckley. Me. I saw myself at 6 years old, standing by the tree, holding a ribbon, whispering through tears. Take anything. Just don't let Daddy hit her again. And it did. It took my father. That was the first debt, the start of a ledger. The roots took him and left nothing behind. But the hollow never forgets who opens the door. And I had opened it. I collapsed my knees. Then Milo, I choked. The shape pulsed. The boy was taken because a door had already been opened. His mother only asked because you once gave permission. Lorna didn't know, but you did. I screamed, not in rage, not even in fear, in grief. For Milo, for Lucy, for the dozens before them, for myself, because I hadn't even remembered until now. The first sin wasn't Lorna's. It was mine. The hollow reached toward me. I felt it pull on my ribs, slip into my throat, fill my lungs with rot. Then it whispered, leave the boy, bring the mother. Only then will balance be returned. One for one true. Part 7. The Debt Collector. I came back from the hollow changed. Not injured, not bleeding, but marked. The pit had sealed itself behind me, like it had never been there. but I could still feel its pulse beneath the forest floor, like the whole forest was a body and I had walked inside its throat. And now it was swallowing everything I loved. When I stepped out of the woods, the sky was wrong. Too still, too orange. The sun looked like it was bleeding out behind the tree line. The motel stood in silhouette, quiet, like a postcard from somewhere that never existed. Lorna was sitting on the porch swing, brushing Milo's hair again. He stared straight ahead. He didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't exist. She looked up when she saw me. "You look awful," she said softly. I didn't answer. I just sat across from her and waited. After a long silence, she spoke again. "Is it true? He's really mine." I nodded. "He's yours now, but he never left the hollow." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means he's not whole," I said. "He's what was given back, not what was taken." Lorna went quiet. Then, like something unspooling inside her, "It was worth it." I stood up. "No, it wasn't." I led her to the woods. She didn't resist. Not fully. Something in her knew. Maybe had always known. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The forest was darker than before. The path had changed. The trees leaned in, whispering things we couldn't hear, but felt. When we reached the edge of the clearing, Lorna froze. The hollow tree stood before us, gaping and wet. At its roots, Milo stood waiting. Still in his hoodie, still in his red-laced sneakers. But his eyes were gone. In their place were holes that reached too deep, tunnels that went through his skull and into something else. Something behind. He smiled. "Hi, Mom." Lorna fell to her knees. "You're not, no, what did they?" He walked toward her. "I'm what you wanted," he said. "You asked for me back. You traded, and I came. But you're not my baby." "I never was," he said softly. "You made me with grief. They gave me bones made of memory, skin made of regret." He looked at me then. She opened the door first. Lorna turned to me, tears flooding down her face. "What is he talking about?" I couldn't meet her eyes. "When we were kids," I said, "I made a wish. I asked them to take Dad, to protect you. It was the first debt. Everything else spiraled from there." Lorna stared at me like I was a stranger. Then she laughed, not cruelly, just empty. "I knew," she said finally. I blinked. "What?" I always wondered how he just disappeared. No one ever asked why he left. Not even Mom. She just stopped talking about him. She looked at the tree. "Maybe I wanted this," she said. "Maybe we both did." Milo reached for her hand. "I can make it stop," he whispered. "The grief, the ache, the guilt, all of it. Just come with me." Lorna looked back at me. "You know what I have to do," she said. I did. I nodded. She stood, took Milo's hand, and walked into the hollow. The forest shook, not violently, but in relief, like something ancient had finally been sated. The bark sealed behind them, stitching together like skin over a wound. And just like that, it was quiet. I stayed in the woods until morning. The motel still stood. Empty now. No guests. No ghost child. No sister brushing hair on the porch. Just me and the dead. Settled. Part 8. The Keeper of the Ledger. Weeks passed, or maybe it was only days. Time lost its shape in Black Hollow after the tree closed. I moved through the motel like a ghost, vacuuming rooms no one had checked into, folding sheets no one had touched, restocking vending machines no one had opened. I tried to convince myself I was just finishing things, wrapping up loose ends. But the truth was, I didn't want to leave, because the hollow hadn't gone silent. It was only sleeping, and I was afraid of what it might dream. One morning, I woke to find the motel ledger open on the front desk. I hadn't touched it. No one had. At least, no one still living. There, scrawled in my own handwriting, except I hadn't written it, was a single line, one in exchange for none. No name, no offer, just that. I tore the page out and burned it behind the motel in a rusted trash barrel. But the next day, the same words were back, over and over again. The Hollow wasn't asking for payment anymore. It was offering something else. I began researching again, digging deeper into the lore that had started this. Old forest legends from Appalachia, stories of tree-bound watchers, of beings that harvest the grief of mortals the way we might tap maple for syrup. One phrase kept appearing in handwritten letters, obscure forums, cursed pages of books that smelled like blood. The Hollow keeps its own. It wasn't just about trades. It was about tethers. If you took from it, or gave to it, or even believed in it long enough, it kept you. I could have left. I packed bags. More than once. Got in my car, turned the key, drove to the edge of the county line. But I never made it past the welcome to Grayson County sign. The woods were always there. Sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right, sometimes directly in front of the road. Black Hollow was everywhere once it had your name. One night, I stood by the tree again. The bark had healed, but the shape remained. A black knot in the world, pulsing faintly. "I'm still here," I said. "So what now?" The wind didn't answer, but something underneath it did. A whisper, not from outside me, but from inside. "Keep the balance." I reopened the motel, not for guests, not for business, but because it was a gate, and gates left untended become doors. I didn't want another child to disappear, another parent to fall to madness. So I stayed, and I watched, and I recorded. The ledger is thicker now. I write down the whispers, the movements, the names that almost appear and vanish like smoke. The dreams people email me about after driving through the county for only 5 minutes. A woman from Ohio said she saw a boy standing in the woods off Route 9. Red lace sneakers, hollow eyes. She crashed her car trying to avoid him. Another guest sent me a sketch her son drew during their stay. A faceless figure in front of a tree. She never saw the tree, but her son did. I don't make trades. Not anymore. But sometimes I see her. Lorna, in dreams, sitting at the edge of the tree line, brushing hair that isn't there, humming lullabies to something still growing inside the bark. She doesn't speak, but I know what she's thinking. She's waiting for me to finish what we started. Until then, I stay in room 1. It's where the ledger sleeps. The Hollow doesn't need more blood. It just needs someone to remember. And I remember everything.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.